Have you ever come out of a prison and, you like you said, you build this trust and you get to know a number of these prisoners in all the different ones that you go to. Have you ever come out of somewhere and really believed that, or you've made like a special attachment or an emotional connection with one of them that you either believe that they might be innocent because they come and they tell you I'm innocent? Have you ever had a feeling there that they genuinely might be, or you've walked away feeling uneasy that they are still locked up and this person actually might be completely safe to reintegrate back into society? Those type of feelings, I can imagine it's probably quite easy to be susceptible to that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've met them all in different guises. I've met the guys that have protested their innocence that I genuinely believe are innocent, or people that have been in prison 4 or 5 years, they haven't been convicted, and even if they are convicted, they'll probably only serve 3 years, they've done 2 more years. That's unfair. I've equally met serial killers and interviewed serial killers who, if they were ever released, they would go on to kill again, but they don't see themselves as bad people. They see they've always got a reason or an excuse for the murders that they committed. And you scratch your head and think, what the fuck? Sexual offenders, they just don't understand in some of these places that what they've done is wrong. That the sexual offences that they've committed within their environments and communities is wrong. So I've met all types of guys. I come out of each episode and kind of drop my shoulders and think that was depressing for different reasons. It might be the conditions. It might be because of the individuals. What I'm mostly surprised by is the audience's reaction. So in the last season in Moldova, I met these 2 guys and I was in their cells, and it's a very depressing place because these guys are never, ever going to be released. If you commit murder in Moldova, you go to prison for life. So all the guys I met are never, ever, ever going to see daylight, but they're trying to fight that through the courts. And I met this guy called Lilian and his cellmate. Didn't know what they were in for. I was their cellmate. I knew that they were murderers, but I didn't know the murders they committed. Long story short, we're cooking, we're laughing, we're singing. I'm trying to sing in Moldovan and having fun with these guys. And then the moment comes, as it always does in these shows, where I find out a little bit more about these characters. So Lillian's in there for the murder of a police officer, although he says he didn't pull the trigger that killed the cop. And the other guy's in there for a double murder. He killed an elderly lady and a young woman. And I had to take a breath, I had to get out of the cell because I was really shocked by the crimes that they committed and the gravity of the double murderer. But the audience's reaction to those individuals has blown me away. There has been more sympathy for those individuals than there has been for many other individuals that I met. And I don't understand why. Well, I do, because people tell me that these guys who depend on their elderly parents to provide them with food, who may die soon, may not be able to provide them with food anymore. So people want to send them parcels, they want to send them money, they want to do stuff. And it blows me away. But what I will say is, having come out of a lot of these prisons, I am left with this feeling that more could be done to improve the humanity and the treatment of these individuals, because not all of them are murderers. Not all. It could be one of you 2 guys who, after this interview, go down the street and somebody attacks you and you try and help him and you knock the guy down and you're in prison for manslaughter. Yeah. You're not a bad guy. You're not a murderer. You didn't mean to. You were just protecting your friend. So there are lots of those kind of guys in there. And that drove me to set up a foundation. So as a result of the work that I've been doing on Netflix, I've started a foundation to try and improve the conditions and the humanity and the resources in many of these prisons.
There was a moment in your Solomon Islands episode where you met a bloke that killed his 11-year-old son, and it looked like you were taken aback by that. What was your kind of experience having someone in front of you who has killed their literal child?
I get into the space of these individuals and I know that they're murderers, right? I know that they've done something serious, but I don't know what it is. So when you're standing there, when I'm standing there talking to this guy, and in this particular scenario in the Solomon Islands, we're in the kitchen packing food for the rest of the prisoners, talking to this guy who's got a responsibility, he's got a responsible job in the prison. We're talking, and then all of a sudden he tells me, I ask him what he's in for, he tells me he killed his 10-year-old son, his own 10-year-old son. And it just gets worse, I'm taken back. I'm like, fuck, you killed your own son. Why? Because he stole a watermelon. He killed his 10-year-old son because he stole a watermelon. How did he kill him? He beat him to death with a stick. And it's like me asking the question, surely there comes a point where when you're hitting your son, you realize that he is lifeless or in so much agony and pain that you have to stop. But he beat him to death with a stick and goes to prison for life. And I meet lots of characters where when they tell me the crimes that they've committed, I'm just, saddened, surprised, shocked, disgusted. And I react like you would when you meet someone as you just did. Oh my God, 10-year-old son.
Yeah.
And it's hard. It's hard to, computerize, after I've got to come out of there and I have my own mechanisms to wash away all of those stories that I've heard and all those depressing, murderous kind of activities and actions by people who were once children who grow into young men and become adults and murderers. It's scary.
Was there a particular prison that you went to and you were just gobsmacked at either the state of it, the condition of it, or just one that really sits in your mind and you're there like, this to me is truly the worst of the worst in terms of just like the condition of it, what goes on in it? Is there one that really sticks out to you?
I'd say there's two, and both are in South America. One was in Brazil and the other one was in Paraguay for two different reasons. In Brazil, it's because the men that I were meeting are part of a gang culture, the PCC and the Red Command. So they control the drugs in the country, they control the prisons, they control the drugs. And these individuals that I was meeting were not only in prison, but whilst they've been in prison, they've committed acts so barbaric, it's hard to comprehend. And by that I mean they chop the heads off of other prisoners and play football with their heads. And it means nothing to them. The conditions in that place are so barbaric. You just cannot do anything to improve it. You cannot do anything to get into the mindsets of these individuals. How does a man, and I've seen it with my own eyes, where they chop the heads off of rival gang members, kick them about and do things to their dead bodies. And I've seen them cut arms off, legs off and everything, barbaric. And then I'm standing in front of those guys talking to them like I am you. And the things that they've seen and the things that they've done are just hard to comprehend. Equally in Paraguay, they do a similar thing. They follow the Brazilian gang culture because it's overlapped there. But the conditions in Paraguay are just mind-boggling. It beggars belief how hundreds and hundreds of prisoners are sleeping outside. They're allowed to have knives. They're allowed to have knives by the authorities. They're allowed to have drugs, which they smoke openly in front of the guards, because if the authorities try to stop them, a riot kicks off. So I met the equivalent to Pablo Escobar in Paraguay prison, for example. So he's in there, the main drug dealer. And on one occasion, they shipped him from the prison. And as soon as they shipped him from the prison, the drug flow stopped. And so all the prisoners kicked off and started killing each other. So the governor had to bring him back to the prison so he could continue to sell drugs in the prison. It's just, but the conditions in that place, it's like a small ecosystem where they build their own cells, they build their own communities, they open their own little shops and things like that inside the prison. It's bizarre, it really is.
There's always like stories that come out, and off the top of my head, it always tends to be around like South America and things like that, where you actually find that the prisoners sort of run the prison, in the sense that, there's a story of like Escobar and all those guys. They just ran the prison as they wished and as they pleased. And is that something that you notice is particularly prevalent in places in South America? Because then I look at the ones in maybe like Southeast Asia, those places, and it seems very, very, very tight, and what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And it just seems like almost two polar opposites. Is that a fair comparison to make?
You're spot on, and you're right. It's mainly in South America. In Costa Rica, I saw it. In Paraguay, I saw it. In Brazil. It's strange, though, isn't it? Because even though the prisoners have total control of the prison, of other prisoners, and even the staff who are so corruptible, you wonder why they're still in prison. Why these guys don't just get them to open the gate and walk out. There is this bizarreness about it, because they are so powerful, these individuals. When I went to Paraguay, for example, the only reason I survived that prison was because I met that Pablo Escobar, who gave me safe passage. It took me days. And when I met him, he had this entourage as a big guy. It was just such a bizarre, strange meeting with this guy inside prison. But it was me kind of negotiating with him that I'm a good guy. And what I'm here to do is just reflect the conditions and what people have to say as opposed to judge them. And I had to do that in Costa Rica. I had to do that in Brazil, where you meet the head honcho, the guy at the top of the hierarchy who gives you safe passage. So if I've met them and had a conversation with them and they don't want to kill me, no one else is allowed to kill me. I sort of exaggerate it, but it's true. Whereas in Bali, for example, in season 7, the guards are in total control.
Yeah.
As they are in the African prisons, although the African prisons that I've been to in South Africa, in Lesotho, are, the conditions are terrible, really, really bad. The guards still have control of those places. The prisoners are terrified of them because they have a license to beat and kill those prisoners if they want to. And they do. That's how strange it is. Whereas in Bali, for example, the prison guards do a lot to try, and it's a cultural thing, they do a lot to try and rehabilitate the prisoners, whereas in all these other places there is no such thing as rehabilitation or redemption or anything like that. They're just housed, kept until they're released back into society, back into the culture that they came from.